Smarties, today we are discussing the idea of assuming competence. We define what this idea is for us, which is our fundamental belief, our core foundational value of how we are entering into interactions with the learners in our practice. We also chat about some of the dangers of this idea and how it can actually increase conflict in family and home life if you're not careful. If you've been here for a while, thank you so much for being part of our journey here at Learn Smarter Podcast. And if you're new to the podcast, or if you've been here a while, we would love it if you would go ahead and give us a 5-star review. It helps other people find the podcast. And if you leave a comment, we love that. We screenshot it, we put it in a shared folder. So we always have something that we can go back that's tangible that we can look at. Because sometimes, Smarties, we don't hear enough from you. You can always do that. You can always email us at rachel@learnsmarterpodcast.com or respond to our weekly email that we send out every Tuesday morning. If you want to be on that weekly email, go to our website, www.learnsmarterpodcast.com. Let's dig in.
You want to learn faster, but sometimes working harder is just not the answer. You have to learn smarter. The Educational Therapy Podcast.
Hi, Smarties. Welcome to episode 352 of Learn Smarter, the Educational Therapy Podcast. I'm Stephanie Pitts.
And I'm Rachel Kapp.
And today we're talking about assuming competence.
So this is an idea I've been thinking a lot about the last few weeks, and I pitched the idea for an episode, and then you actually took it in a direction that I wasn't thinking about at all, which is why we love doing this podcast and talking about these kind of bigger ideas. But what I was really thinking about is the assumptions that we're all making when we are going into a new relationship with a client or really any sort of social interaction. There's a lot of assumptions. How someone's going to behave, how someone's going to look. Are they going to be on time? Are they going to have everything we need? Like, we can assume with some clients, they're not going to have everything they need. We can assume with some parents, no, they're not going to pick up the phone when you call, even though you designated that time to chat. We can make all these assumptions. And I wanted to talk about this idea of assuming competence. Now, I will sort of start off by saying the majority of our learners have some sort of learning diagnosis or medical diagnosis, but they are in the mild to moderate range. So that's kind of the scope that I wanted to have this conversation with you about. But I was thinking about this idea of assuming competence and assuming that our learners will learn and can be competent. And that basic assumption is almost a core value. It underlies everything in how we approach and how much we're coaching parents to be involved in the process. And we start, for example, at Kapp Ed Therapy, and I know at my Ed Therapist, with let us do it. Let us do the work with them, step out of it, and then if we need to, we will invite you back into the process in a very calculated, specific, hopefully healthy way, because we're starting from a basic assumption that the kids are competent and they can do it.
Yeah, so I think that there's two parts to this. I think, yes, we can assume that they can get there. I think the danger with assuming competence for some parents is assuming that they are already there and it's a choice that they're not being able to do something. For example, they were able to work on that project and get it in on time, but now this time they weren't able to do it. So when you said assuming competence, I asked you specifically what you meant because I was thinking I see some danger in assuming competence because when you assume that they can, that they will.
But then they're not.
And so then that assumption becomes a bigger problem.
So maybe to get more specific, we're assuming competence that they will.
Yes.
As opposed to assuming competence that they can.
Yeah.
But we do believe that they can.
Absolutely. It's just if they can in that moment.
But they can, but maybe not yet.
Right.
That's where our growth mindset word of maybe not yet comes into play, and all the other factors sort of come into play. So maybe getting specific of, we have a fundamental belief that they can be competent and will get to that level. We are assuming
yes,
that they will be competent.
Yes.
Where it can get tricky is parents who are assuming they are competent, but not yet meeting expectations.
Exactly. I hear that a lot from parents.
Yeah, because then it's a behavior.
Exactly. And this is where you and I often talk about, okay, well, we need to get curious. Why were they able to do it the one time, but now they're not able to do it this next time? Okay. Looking at diagnoses or not diagnoses, looking at everything and getting curious. What class is it? What are they expected to do? Is it, different times of day? Is it different expectations? Is the output different? There's so many different variables that you need to take into account that not everything is the same. Even if it's the same teacher, the same subject, the same, way that they're being graded, it could be a different time of year and they're burnt out. They can't do it this time. So you need to get curious about where the stopgap is. And so that's why I said there's some danger in assuming competence all the time.
If you are looking for immediacy.
Yeah. And the assuming competence as an expectation.
Yeah, it's that expectation around competence that can really lead to some conflict in family and home life and inner conflict for the kid, because sometimes the learner themselves will believe that about themselves and then beat themselves up when they're not.
Exactly.
I totally see that. So this is an important baseline. I think it's really important as clinicians that we examine those sort of core values, core beliefs that we are entering into a therapy with. Mm-hmm. And so one of ours is assuming that these are skills that we can teach.
Yes.
And these are strategies that are generalizable.
Yeah.
And we should do an episode on generalizing strategy.
Yeah. And that they will get there.
1,000%.
Mm-hmm.
Where we have to get really clear in the language is it's going to take a minute.
Yep.
So it's important to assume this competence because it's going to empower learners. It's going to foster their growth mindset about themselves. It's going to increase their own metacognitive awareness.
Yep.
That's that idea of thinking about their thinking. And it will foster that independence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always helpful, I'll just add this in, that assumption of competence when the student is not yet meeting that expectation for a parent will elicit an emotional reaction.
Emotionally charged. I was talking to a parent yesterday about emotionally charged, and it can spiral.
And it can be really dramatic and traumatic for sort of everybody. I just had a conversation a couple of days ago with a parent. At the end of the conversation, we had been quite casual with each other. We've spoken a few times. And I probably said, we just got to get you out of this.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah. And that's how you're going to sell it to your kid, too.
Exactly. They want their parents out of the equation. And one of the things that we wrote down about why all of this can lead to such frustration when they're not behaving competently. If you start any sentence with, I know they can, or they should be able to, or they did last time, that's where the mistake is immediate, because you have to get curious. Just because they did it once doesn't mean that they can do it again.
There are dangers of taking another approach. If we're not assuming competence fundamentally as the core value, core belief, then what are we doing? It can become this self-fulfilling prophecy of not meeting expectations.
Yes, exactly. So I can't, so I won't.
Yeah, of course. As opposed to, I will as I learn to.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So with that, we just wanted to sort of have that initial conversation about what are the core values, the core beliefs that you are going into your sessions with, both if you're a parent, if you're the learner yourself, because we do work with a lot of adult learners. Oh, Steph, I did want to share this sort of anecdote. I recently did a speaking engagement. Been doing a lot of them this year, as are you. And if you're interested in having Steph and I or one of us come speak, definitely reach out to us because we are loving doing this right now. And one of the parents who had heard me speak signed up for a phone call and we were chatting. And she goes, Rachel, I really came to the talk thinking I was there for my girls, for my daughters, which we hear this all the time, right? And she goes, I cannot tell you what happened in my body when you were like, we work with adults too. because it suddenly felt like everything that she had struggled with, this is the solution. Mm-hmm. And this is the why. And so she had this deeper level of understanding. And even going back to this larger conversation of assuming competence, she said to me, I am an accomplished, competent adult, and yet I struggle with X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And it's just a reminder to grant grace that as we are adults learning for our kids about things, we're taking care of our little kid inside of us. And also, you might find something that could really benefit you and then the rest of your family structure. So it's just being open about that idea of, we work with the adults too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to just give yourself grace, give your kids grace.
We've begun working together, and she said, what do you always say? It's everything I always needed, but I didn't know where to find it.
It's everything I never knew I needed, and where were you when I was a kid?
Yeah, those two ideas. And so it's really fun to be able to make that sort of impact later on in people's journeys.
100%.
So never too late to learn a skill.
Yeah.
With that, Smarties, have a great week.
Have a great week.